Welcome to our presentation for MBA617, Organizational Theory for Managers. We're Group 4 and we'll be presenting on knowledge management. This is brought to you by Ryan Allen, Ruth Post, Kirsten Halpin, and Alyssa Larson. Let's get involved and learn all about knowledge management, the role it plays with IT and the organization. The key things that you want to take away from this presentation are: what the heck is knowledge management, the 4 goals and how do you achieve them, the difference between explicit and tacit, the knowledge management process cycle, strategies and organizational challenges associated with knowledge management, and also a fun way to get involved. So what the heck is knowledge management? Knowledge management views information as a primary asset for organizations and is critical to all business functions from daily operations to future planning and growth. Efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation are all supported by having high-quality, accessible information flow within an organization. Knowledge management provides tools and processes for organizations to identify, organize, and communicate and effectively utilize knowledge that is both internal and external to the organization. KM as a discipline has been evolving from the technological boom of the late 1990s, when computer technologies offered new ways to access and communicate information. The tremendous increase in volume of information available to organizations and the new ways of thinking about information as more than just factual data precipitated the demand for products, tools, theoretical frameworks, and tested strategies to facilitate control of knowledge assets. Knowledge management began as a way for organizations to systemize collection, dissemination, and use of explicit knowledge resources. More recently, expansion of internet capabilities, communication tools, and wireless connectivity have stimulated a co-evolution of IT communication that can facilitate access to tacit knowledge resources. IT applications support 4 primary goals DAFT identified for implementing knowledge management processes: finding knowledge, organizing knowledge, making knowledge available and usable, and fostering an information sharing culture. Finding knowledge. Application of IT to support these goals differs whether the knowledge is explicit or tacit in nature. Explicit knowledge is easily collected and stored by a variety of database and indexing systems, ranging from simple spreadsheets to complex multi-layered shared repositories. Organizing knowledge. Organizing such data is accomplished through indexing systems, and accessibility is enhanced through searchable database functions and electronic document transfer. The ability to store documents digitally and anticipate multi-user, multi-portal access creates an ability for organizations to efficiently share data and knowledge and move toward an expectation of knowledge transparency within the organization. Making knowledge available and usable can be accomplished in a couple of ways. Here's a few: document sharing, accessible databases, networking and shared drives, video conferencing such as Skype and FaceTime, cloud computing, or utilizing a dashboard. Fostering an information sharing center. A knowledge sharing center requires a high level of trust and transparency. IT contributes to tacit knowledge management, largely supporting interactive communication critical to the 4 KM goals: ideas, values, and experiences, the core of tacit knowledge. These can be captured and shared through platforms such as message boards, surveys, and blogs, and group emails. Software for concept mapping and creative work can help to codify individual ideas for use by groups. Today's managers also benefit from a societal trend towards information sharing that is normalizing the transparency required to promote a knowledge sharing culture within an organization. Explicit or tacit. In his discussion on knowledge management, DAFT identifies explicit and tacit knowledge as different types of information assets, each with unique qualities requiring different KM strategies. Traditionally, knowledge management was compartmentalized as either explicit or tacit. This is the most broadly known approach and understood to be the foundation of knowledge management. It supports the creation of successful tools and strategies to share specific information types and is conceptually simple for organizations to implement. In this approach, the organization is broken down into segments, and knowledge is managed in that manner. It does not take into account the potential benefits of the holistic approach, which is more concerned with the whole corporate system rather than the individual units. Explicit knowledge is information that is outwardly stored, codified, and can be articulated. It's the know-what, factual information accessed from databases, books, internet pages, and other repositories. It's physically available and often housed within organizations and is communicated through person document exchanges, manuals, technical training, formal education, or self-directed learning. It requires strategies for collection and curation that can sort and store volumes of data and information in ways that make it the most useful and available. Managing explicit knowledge assets requires a heavy investment in IT tools and processes. Tacit knowledge is less tangible than explicit knowledge. It originates within the individual, grows from personal experiences, and is difficult to communicate and formalize, and is often regarded as common sense, intuition, or having good judgment. It's the know-how information not consciously thought about, but just instinctually and communicated through person-to-person exchanges, such as mentoring and personal conversations. Capturing and using tacit knowledge requires developing communication strategies to pass this knowledge on, or else it will remain within the individual. Mentoring retreats and establishing a culture of communication take an investment of time and intentional planning, but is very critical in fostering exchange of tacit knowledge. In 2008, Fropalo postulated that organizations should be concerned with a third information type, implicit knowledge. This is tacit-like information that can be captured and codified. It is the detail behind the baker's feel of a ready-bread dough, or the subtleties by which a coffee connoisseur defines a quality bean. Smith, in 2012, suggested organizations consider a system-based approach to knowledge management. He adds to this idea by suggesting organizational knowledge can be defined as a system in which information is dynamic and can be translated and transformed, internalized and externalized, and moved between tacit, implicit, and explicit qualities. This ecological perspective toward knowledge resources demonstrates utility beyond that reflected in the limited explicit tacit compartmentalization approach. The knowledge management process cycle. Creation. The knowledge management process cycle begins with creation or acquisition of knowledge. Socialization describes identifying and sharing knowledge assets via person-to-person interactions such as mentoring relationships. Externalization is a process used to convert tacit knowledge to explicit knowledge in order to facilitate widespread sharing. Internalization is a process of converting explicit knowledge into tacit knowledge. Combination describes combining two or more sources of explicit knowledge to create a new explicit knowledge. Acquisition. Knowledge acquisition is different from knowledge creation in that it refers to gathering and storing existing knowledge. This is done through searching for new knowledge outside of the organization that will add value to the business. Sifting refers to sifting through the results of the search to identify and collect specific information that will add value. Grafting is the process of acquiring this new tacit knowledge. It usually occurs by hiring a person who has experience or expertise in an area that the organization wishes to expand to. Refinement. Knowledge refinement is used to identify essential knowledge assets to be formatted, stored, and ultimately utilized. It is at this stage that most tacit knowledge is converted to explicit knowledge. The next step to include refinement knowledge is the organization's memory. Organizational memory includes knowledge stored in the minds of organizational participants that held in electronic repositories, that which have been acquired or retained by groups or teams, and that which has been embedded in businesses, processes, products, or service in its relationship with customers, partners, and suppliers. Transfer. Next, knowledge is either transferred or shared. Transferring knowledge is defined as the focus and purpose communication of knowledge from sender to a known receiver, as shown here. Sharing. Shared knowledge is disseminated broadly through a variety of means, including databases and other repositories. Utilization. Once knowledge has been transferred or shared, it is utilized by the recipient. Organizational performance leads to improvements or adjustments that are made to the KM system, and the cycle begins anew after this. Strategies and organizational challenges. To provide the class with an example of KM strategies in use, we will focus on the application in the healthcare sector. Healthcare is a dynamic and complex field that requires a vast amount of knowledge. It is important for healthcare providers to have access to current and relevant information to guide when providing patient care. We will examine two case studies and the factors and the end results. Partners Healthcare is the first study that was published in the Harvard Business Review. Managers at Partner decided that a KM program would be beneficial to the company by giving the physicians better access to information and would guide their diagnosis and treatment plans, with an overarching goal of reducing medical errors. They designed a custom order entry system that was embedded in the workplace. It would run orders such as prescriptions and lab tests entered by a physician through a database and provide the physician with any additional information. Example would be allergies to drugs. It would also let the physician know if there were more cost-effective options that could be administered. The results of this were very good. Although this new system was expensive and time-consuming, it increased access to information and reduced serious medical errors by 55%. Fewer errors also translated into approximately $1 million per year in cost savings for the partners. Why was this so successful? The KM strategies aligned with the company goals. It improved the quality of healthcare that was being provided. Also, due to the embedded nature of the system, physicians were required to use the program. It did not require any additional effort because it was already integrated into their everyday tasks. The system was designed to present the physician with instant and pertinent information while still allowing them to make decisions. Including that the end user was included in the development stage was critical to the success of this design. The Emmanuel Healthcare Center. The clinic developed a KM initiative to address the issue of knowledge being lost due to employee turnover. To accomplish this, they developed an intranet that physicians and clinicians could use to store previously written medical practices, but neglected to include input from the clinical staff who would actually be using the system. This program was considered successful after a trial period and the goals were written for medical practice were met. However, data collected after the program had been in place for a year showed less than 1% of the staff had even logged into the program. Also, employees who use the system for training purposes were 23% more likely to fail a procedural exam when compared to an employee who had completed traditional in-person training. There are several reasons that this was not successful. The first is that it did not align with the operational activities of the clinical staff. Another reason this failed is the technology that was used was not appropriate. The KM system was not embedded into the existing system and would have been much more effective if it was. Interviews showed that some of the clinical staff believed it was a tool meant only for administration. The final reason for failure was the knowledge power attitude that many of the physicians expressed in their interviews. This resulted in many physicians being reluctant to share information with others as well. Takeaway for managers. After examining these contrasting case studies, we have compiled a list of key points for managers who are developing a KM initiative. The first is to ensure that KM strategies align with the organizational goals. Also, it is important to include the end user in the development of the KM strategy. This will help ensure that the strategy is carried out in a way that is beneficial and usable for employees. The KM strategy should be integrated into the existing system so that employees are not burdened with additional work. Lastly, it is important to communicate clearly with employees regarding the KM strategy. If they understand the value behind the initiative, they will be more likely to be receptive to necessary changes. So let's get engaged. These links will also be posted under the link for the presentation. There are 2 levels of games and also a third game that is more like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So hopefully you guys have some fun with that and learn some more about knowledge management. Lastly, here are our cited works. Thank you for joining us in our presentation of knowledge management.